So first of all, thanks everyone for joining us today. If you're looking for the State of Dodge County Business Update meeting, you're in the right place. This is our second kind of virtual town hall session today. We just had a great one for Jefferson County. My name is Julie Oliver. I'm the marketing manager for Thrive Economic Development. We are the economic development organization for Jefferson and Dodge counties. I just also wanted to note that this particular session was planned in partnership with our friends at the Beaver Dam Chamber of Commerce. I see Tracy on the call, and you can find the Beaver Dam Chamber at beaverdamchamber.com. Our panelists today are going to provide an update on the local impact of COVID-19, as well as an economic outlook for county operations. They'll also provide a few outcomes and projections and an update on some resources available to businesses impacted by the COVID-19 public health crisis. So a few logistics. You're probably all muted. The last meeting we ended up opening up during the Q&A and people just kind of were able to ask questions not using chat, just by talking, and that seemed to work pretty well. So we'll probably do that again. But if you do prefer to use the chat function, you're welcome to do that. We are recording this meeting and we'll have a link to that on our website tomorrow. You can find us at thrived.org. I'd like to introduce our panelists. Today we have Russell Kotke. Russell is the Dodge County Board of Supervisors Chairman. We have Vicki Pratt, President of Thrive Economic Development, and Kevin Kaufman, Director of the Wisconsin Small Business Development Center at UW-Whitewater. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us. And with that, I can turn it over to Russell, if you'd like to give us an update on what's going on in Dodge County.
Same as that's going on in the rest of the state of Wisconsin, right? COVID-19. Yeah. What can we say? Yeah, Dodge County is biting, is just like everyone else. We've cutting our budget, looking at our budget. Every committee meeting that's being held right now is talking budget. We're trailing down. We're trying, anything we can cut. We have a hiring freeze on, except for Clearview, the Sheriff's Department, and Human Services. The rest of the departments are on a hiring freeze for right now, and we're looking at projects, some highway projects that might be changed. Highway committee meets tomorrow morning again, talk about some of these issues. We're, trying to throttle down and conserve our money, because we know the state and the sales taxes projections are going to go down. I mean, our projection with the Counties Association tells us it's about 15% sales tax reduction, and I think, and we agree around here, that we're probably 25 to 30% reduction. We're thinking more likely to be reduction in sales tax money. We're not going to see that number coming down until 3 months out, because of the way the payment schedule works with the state, but paying us. So it's going to be a little time, and and then we're also, the other thing we're following every day is the court case, whether this, what's going to happen there, because that's going to tell us a lot of things too. So we have to watch that, and we don't know what they're going to say. So hopefully we can do that successfully and tail down and bite it where we have to, and just have to cut down, because there's not going to be extra money floating anywhere from the state, or federals are not going to, it's going to not come down like it was. I'm sure as the budget comes down from the state, and they talk about a budget repair bill. Well, I don't know what that's going to look like. We have no idea. So that's a very wide open subject as far as I'm concerned. So, and if you look at our website, we have a lot of information on there as far as the COVID-19 things that are going on. That also links you up to with Vicki's Thrive, and Nate Olson are working, who was up in planning development actually. I've been strongly working on this. He's a good contact if you want, and the information is out there. So, you know, if nothing else, check with planning and development on that website, and there's more information there. So maybe I'm kind of short and sweet, but I'm open to questions at the end. So go ahead.
Thanks, Russ.
All right, thank you. Yeah, we have Vicki. Vicki has some really interesting information. I was pretty fascinated about the real estate trends that you talked about in the last meeting. So I'm going to turn it over to Vicki, and she can give us some data and some projections that she's been in a lot of meetings on.
I have indeed. Thank you. So first of all, just you know, to back jump on what Russ talked about. Obviously, as a result of the original stay order, which came, you know, mid-March, we looked at what can we be doing to try to help our small businesses across the 2 counties. So Thrive Economic Development covers a 2-county region, and partnered with the Small Business Development Center, which also covers this entire region, to launch what we call our Back to Business program. And so we launched that midday on the 1st of April. And as of today, we've had 88 different businesses that have reached out to us looking for assistance. And we launched the program with a couple of different things in mind. It wasn't just to help businesses access the pandemic-related resources that were coming out. And of course, we've seen the CARES Act. We understand, and Kevin can talk a little more about that. We're hoping for a CARES 4.0 because we're now at CARES 3.5. So we're hoping that there will be another package. But we wanted to help our businesses access the resources that were pertinent for their type of business, because I think most of you who are on call who are running a business know that not every resource fit every business. So it was understanding what are the resources that fit my business, but also working with businesses individually to figure out, based on their business model, based on what they do, what are the things they need to be doing right now immediately in order to sustain so that they are still in business when the stays are lifted. And also helping them think about what can we be doing differently going forward, because the recovery, I mean, we'll talk a lot about recovery later, but there are many projections and predictions out there. And I guess, you know, if I could boil it down to 1 or 2 statements, it's don't assume for a moment that the switch is going to flip and that everything is going to look just like it did before, because it isn't. So we launched the Back to Business program, 88 folks, 88 business owners. I will tell you that 61 of that 88 came from Dodge County. So there's a lot of small business owners across Dodge County who reached out to us for assistance and have received that assistance. Some of them were continuing to be engaged in and engaged with. Vast majority of them are retail focused. That's their business. It's Main Street. It's you come to my door and I sell you something. We also broke out professional services, and professional services is the next largest chunk. So almost 50% of those businesses that came to us for assistance are retail. The next largest chunk, which was about 32%, are professional services providers. And that's everything from hairdressers and massage therapists to accountants and attorneys. And yes, we've had those folks ask us for assistance, and we're happy to give them that assistance. We've learned some interesting things as a result of this, learned a lot of interesting things about our businesses, and we're continuing to learn a lot of interesting things about our communities. So I also want to just jump in and say some of the data points that I think are important is if you take a look at the 1 month time frame from the week ending March 21st to the week ending April 25th, in Dodge County, there were 5,529 new unemployment claims. So 1 month, 5,529 new unemployment claims. It's a lot of people. The data is always behind a week, so that's what we know as of today. So some of the things that we've seen, and I know Kevin can talk a lot more about this, but businesses that have a strong digital presence, that are able to both sell their products or their services online, so make the sale and actually collect the payment online, have fared better than those who didn't have that capacity. That's not to say they weren't hurt. I'm just saying they've fared better because they had a way to still do business. We also have seen very clearly that businesses who had made investments in automation have fared better than those who did not. And so I don't know how many people we have from municipal government on the phone, but I'm going to give a shout out to this. I've been doing this work for almost 30 years in 5 states, so I got a long history with economic development, and economic development incentives always seem to be tied to headcount, and I'm not negating the importance of people working in any way, shape, or form. And I'm not going to say but, and it's time for us to think better about how we provide incentives to help our businesses do what they need to do in order to survive. And so some of those investments should be in automation. Some of those investments should be in that digital presence and that digital footprint, and being able to think outside the box about how they do what they do. They may need market feasibility studies. They may need some assistance to do those types of things rather than tying all assistance to a head count. So I want to talk about retail because all of you who are up in Dodge County have a community that's got a small downtown or a larger downtown, and there's a lot of retail in that downtown, and you want retail in that downtown. So I'm going to share with you, I hate to sound like the deliverer of doom and gloom, but we have to talk the truth. We have to take a look at what are we seeing at a national level, at a state level, and what we think is going to happen at the local level as well. So there are several different groups that I am part of at a national level that look at retail space. And the projections have been that by 2030, 50% of the department store space, so the big box department store space in America, was going to go away. Well, that prediction has now changed to within 2 years. So by 2022, national data leads us to believe that we're going to lose 50% of the retail space that is right now department stores in the United States. Now, also, just to give you a little perspective, we're vastly overbuilt in retail in the United States. We have 24.5 square feet for every human being in the United States of America. 24.5 square feet of space is retail space in America. Let me give you a comparison. In all of Europe, it's 4.5 square feet per person. So we are massively overbuilt in retail space in the United States. Well, what does that mean for your local communities? The future of local Main Street retail operations is dicey at this point. What we are seeing as a national trend is the concierge services. So having a niche and or creating those types of retail services. So rather than I sell only goods here, I also sell a service, so I can wrap around and I can source different things for you and be able to customize that and deliver it to you. I can make the sale, I can take the payment, and I can get it to you without you having to leave your home. That trend, I think we're going to really see take off post-pandemic. But the impact of changing retail space, the impact of real estate, of the change in the way that we do retail, is going to be very difficult. In the state of Wisconsin, municipal governments are absolutely property tax revenue dependent. And if we start changing that real estate footprint post-pandemic, what is that going to mean for revenue sources? So I think from a municipal government perspective, this is a conversation that is going to have to be had, and it's going to be tough because it's a whole new way of thinking about how we do what we do. But I will share with you, one of the lessons we're learning is how effective many workers can be without coming into a building that has an office, a desk, a phone, a computer. And if you saw the article, it came out, I believe, yesterday, Nationwide, the company Nationwide, has taken a look at how well their remote worker situation is actually working out for them. And as a result of that, they are closing 5 operation centers around the country. They're not laying anybody off. They're closing the centers because they don't need them. So this is not going to be the only business that does this, folks. So we need to be thinking about what does that mean for us in the near term and in the long term, because it's going to have an effect on everything we do. There's a multiplier effect from all of this. So I would also share with you that, the national data tells us that the average retail operation with $0 coming in has a 30-day life expectancy. That's it, 30 days, right? We are being told at the state level, and when I'm on calls with my colleagues around the state, there's a prediction that at least 65% of all the closed retail space will not open back up in the state of Wisconsin. Now, whether or not that pans out remains to be seen. This is going to be a tough go, but I will also say to you, and I'm sure we have lenders on the call, I'm sure that there are banks on this call. I think financing for storefront retail is going to be different going forward as well. From my perspective, that means maybe we start thinking about having that revolving loan fund at the county level that can support retail operations. If indeed that's important for your municipality going forward. So the forecasts on GDP are grim. So gross domestic product for the state was forecasted to be $350 billion for 2020. The state prediction is that it's going to go down by $65.3 billion. But in Dodge County, that forecast for 2020 was $3.85 billion of GDP. Right now, the forecast is that that's going to drop by $8.8 million, which is a drop of $2.4 million per day for every day that we're closed for this 2-month time frame as it's currently being predicted. So hopefully we can turn this around sooner rather than later in a safe and sane way. And I am going to stop talking at this point and turn it over to my friend Kevin Kaufman from the Small Business Development Center to talk about the experiences that we've been having as we've been doing outreach to businesses.
Thank you.
You bet.
So the 2 major programs, actually 3 major programs that businesses have availed themselves of are the Economic Injury Disaster Loan through the SBA, which was lent directly from the SBA, the Payroll Protection Program, which was lent through local banks with 100% guarantee and a forgiveness aspect to it, again, to support payroll, and then the federal enhancement of unemployment. And so many businesses, and I want to commend Vicki for the work she did on the Back to Business and the work Nate did on the Back to Business program. As you said, Dodge County, just and Beaver Dam in particular, we saw a lot of businesses come through that. So the small business development centers were tasked and kind of tapped on the shoulder to say, provide technical assistance to help these businesses out there. Statewide, we've touched into about 2,500 of them, or just shy of 2,600 businesses since this all began. We're using March 17th as kind of a beginning point. And directly and about 45,000 through webinars and other areas. For the state of Wisconsin, as we talk about the two major loan programs, the Economic Injury Developer Disaster Loan and the Payroll Protection Plan, a real dichotomy. And the difference is that the Economic Injury Disaster Loans were really started from scratch. And so, Washington had great intent, but they had to build this program literally from nothing. Whereas the Payroll Protection Program, they took an existing program, the 7-8 program, where everything was kind of in place, and were able to move very, very quickly. And the numbers will kind of bear that out. So for Wisconsin, since the beginning of this, again, we're going to use March 17th, as of April 24th, the disaster loans, the economic injury disaster loans, which had that advance that could be up to $10,000. About 14,275 of them have been distributed within the state, totaling about 63.4 million. Only 339 loans have been actually funded in the state, worth about 71.6 million. There is a huge backlog that is sitting out there, and they're attempting to work their way through that. As we turn to the Payroll Protection Program, totally different story. From April 3rd to April 16th, when they ran out of money in the first tranche, 43,400 loans were approved and funded, almost $8.3 billion within the state. Again, they kind of restarted on April 27th, and through last Friday, an additional 30,000 loans were approved and funded for almost $1.7 billion. So the grand total of that within the state is 73,350 loans, totaling just shy of $10 billion that has come through. I mentioned the unemployment as being kind of that third leg, and that $600 enhancement per week lasts through, I believe, July 31st. And we're seeing a lot of usage in that. As businesses are looking out there at their workforce, what we have seen is that businesses with a highly skilled workforce that they don't want to lose, many of those businesses are using the Payroll Protection Program. Others with lower paying jobs, quite frankly, there's a number of employees that make out better using the federal enhancement to the unemployment. And so we've seen that in the retail sector, bars and restaurants, and Main Street retail. It is, as we've talked about, it's for many businesses, if you think bars and restaurants, it's almost like putting your business into an induced coma, and it's how are we going to wake them back up? So this has provided some level of support to get us to the next step. Nobody's really sure what that next step is going to be. That said, I'd like to share a couple of different conversations that I've had recently that shed some light on maybe some best practices out there. The first is, I talked to my old boss, Bob Kill, who's the president of Enterprise Minnesota, the manufacturing extension partnership for the state of Minnesota. And they work and do consulting, as I did, with small to medium-sized manufacturers. They had a number of peer councils made up of CEOs. They expanded that and really threw that out to a much wider audience and developed some basically peer learning platforms. What they have found is that we get a number of business owners together and talk about what are you doing and what's worked well for you. That peer learning is far, far better and far more advantageous to the businesses than somebody spouting, as I am here in a webinar talking to many, many people all at once. So we're trying to facilitate, how do we get best practices promulgated out there and sharing those. The other conversation I had was with a faculty member here who's owned and operated a number of businesses, and he is writing a book on thriving through chaos. And he and I had a couple of long conversations over the weekend. What we are seeing out there is businesses that can be innovative, and literally you strip down and get to that core competency level. The why do my customers love me question that we ask, and then how can we use that to maybe change and pivot in the business. So I live in Lake Mills. One of our local restaurants rather than just opening up their menu and saying, order and we'll meet you curbside. They took a different tack and went with we're going to do kind of chef specials. We're going to kind of look and scour, and we'll tell you on Facebook what we're going to make that night. And they'll limit it to 50 or 60 meals, and make your order by 2 o'clock. And very quickly people glommed on, and many is the time that by noon, they've said, sorry, we're sold out for today. Helps them understand what they need to make and prepare. The food is obviously wonderful based on the response. And they're doing it in a much different way than simply taking what they normally do and put it online. We're seeing other companies do very similar things. So again, kind of finding that niche. Those that are educated like Vicki call it niche, but we say get rich in your niche, and we say get riche in your niche. It doesn't sound nearly as well. So we say get rich in your niche and get as close to your customers as you can. Find out how you can help them. There is a huge piece out there, feeling of wanting to buy local and wanting to help support our local businesses. So reach into your customer base, find out if there isn't a way that you can serve them as you go through that. Obviously, places like bars and hair salons and nail salons are having a much tougher time. And again, it's really kind of an induced coma situation. So, again, we'll have to start to figure out how we're going to wake them up. But those are the areas that we're focused on is, how are you doing so far? And then we're doing the planning. As the faculty member that's writing the book, he said, you've got 3 choices. You can take a dive, you can survive, or you can try and thrive. And so we're trying to help businesses figure their way through that as we get ready to reopen. And I suspect that we'll have a lot of discussion coming up here on what does reopening look like? What is the new normal going to look like? And so is it, can I get more than 10 people together for any reason? And can I keep them 6 feet apart? And what role does personal protection equipment going to play in that? Are we going to be greeting each other in masks for the foreseeable future? And how will that look, and who's going to provide the masks, and what happens when somebody decides not to follow that rule? So we're all trying to navigate this new normal. What we are finding is as we pull together and have meaningful discussions, we're finding nuggets of success and things that we can help spread. So we feel that we're much stronger together, and I think this is a great platform to begin kind of those discussions on how we make it through the next phase as life starts to open it up. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Vicki and Russ and maybe open up for questions.
Yeah, and I'd like to throw out there, yes, you can use the chat format that's at the bottom of your screen, or we can unmute and have some questions. But I also want to put out there just as we're having these conversations, to let you know that I and Nate Olson, Kevin, we have been having conversations about what reopening might look like for us, taking best practices that are coming from a variety of places around the state and quite frankly around the nation. I am on weekly calls with colleagues around the country. Every state is handling this differently. No 2 states are the same, trust me. And what we're seeing, what we're hearing, and we've got several things that we're trying to weigh here, right? As I use this example on the last call, but I know most of you will know exactly what I'm talking about. When you were a kid, my grandmother knew if one of the grandkids got measles, you brought all the grandkids over to that house, made sure they all got them, right? Because you wanted to build up that immunity. You wanted to make sure that these kids all got this at a time in their life when they could handle it, and you didn't want them to get it later in life. And so that's a an easy example of what we mean when we use the word herd immunity. So recognizing that we don't have a vaccine, we can test people today and tomorrow they can be exposed. And so what does that test mean? We have to be thinking about how we get businesses open and protect our population and ensure that we don't overwhelm our healthcare systems. So it has to be thoughtful. It has to be purposeful. I've seen plans that are coming out of joint counties in more rural areas of the state, northern Wisconsin, western Wisconsin. I applaud their efforts. I think they've done a great job of putting together very thoughtful plans for how they're going to reopen. But realistically, we are not in Marathon County, right? We happen to sit between the two largest cities in the state. And we know that there's a lot of back and forth between those two cities. These are the cities with the largest clusters, the largest number of cases. So we have to be thoughtful and mindful of all of that and of ensuring that we're creating scenarios that work for everybody. By the same token, I'm a business advocate, and if it were up to me, my businesses would be open. But it's not up to me. They don't let me make those decisions, and it's probably wise. But making sure that our businesses also understand what is going to be expected of them when they are allowed to reopen. So as Kevin said, are we going to tell our businesses that they can only reopen if everyone in the place has a mask on and you know the floor is marked with 6 feet markers between them? Is that the way we'll let our bars and restaurants reopen? Or will we say, well, you know, if your fire capacity is 75 people, we'll let you reopen at 25% of that? And then it's up to the individual business to figure out, does it make sense for me to open up my kitchen in the way I used to do it, to know that I can only serve 25% of the capacity that I used to serve? Or do I do something like the best practice that Kevin just shared from a restaurant in Lake Mills? Do I rethink what I do so that I can go back into business and still make some monies, but maybe not the same, at least for a while? Obviously, the Supreme Court ruling, as Russ alluded to earlier, we're all watching that. We're all trying to figure out what's that going to mean for our businesses, and how can we make sure that our businesses are going to have what they're going to need in order to get open. So I would love to take your questions, your comments. Either use the chat function or go ahead and unmute at the bottom of your screen down there and throw stuff out to us, because we're happy to have this conversation. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say, as we're working on those reopening recovery plans, if there's something on your mind that's specific to your business or your industry sector, please feel free to share that with us. You can find me on the thriveed.org website. I'm easy to find. You can find Nate Olson with Land Resources in Dodge County, but send us your thoughts and ideas about thoughtful reopening and what you think might work, because it's important that we hear from you as well. We talk to businesses every day, but we may not have talked to you. So send us your thoughts. So I see a few chat numbers down there. Julie, have we got anything?
Nope, the chat is it was from before the meeting. One thing though I wanted to mention, I thought it was really interesting when, and I don't know if there's anyone from education on here, when Dr. Rolfson said in our last session about just how, you know, what happens with education is going to have such a huge impact on
businesses,
our employees and our businesses, because, you know, those kids going to those schools are the children of the local employees. So I think that is something that, you know, cannot be, you know, we're going to be paying such close attention to that. And it's going to have such a huge impact on how employees can work. I mean, if they don't have childcare and if they have kids that aren't in school.
Right.
And nutritional support, and yeah.
Yeah, we got anybody on from education?
No, we do have a question though. What is the level of testing availability in Dodge County? Russ, you got any ideas on that?
It's as much as way I understand this is the testing is going up, but we're still don't have enough. There's not enough to do everybody.
Yep.
That's the last thing I heard today now. So that's the best info I got.
Yeah.
That's
What is it? What is the census in Dodge County that of confirmed and recovered?
As of yesterday, I think we had 40 positives, and so and we've had one death, and I think we had about 20. Half of them are 55% are recovered. So
Okay.
Yeah.
and the positive and the negative tests are going up every day. So
Great.
Though, I'm sorry, this is Jacqueline Shelton. I think that those numbers are obviously going to change quickly with Richie Lou's announcement today. I don't know if
definitely.
you've seen this, but Richie Lou has 7 confirmed cases, and they're bringing in the National Guard as of Friday to test all of their employees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw the announcement. I think that's very smart of them. They're going to shut down and test, and then do whatever needs to happen next. On the last call, we talked a lot about our manufacturers across the state. As you all know, you're Wisconsinites, we make a lot of food in the state of Wisconsin, and it's very, very, very important that we keep, because all of that food processing is also supporting our primary industry, which is agribusiness in the state of Wisconsin, right? So in order for our farmers to thrive, we've got to keep making that food and selling that food and getting it out of the state of Wisconsin and distributed widely. And it's got to be made in a safe environment. There's no question. Got to be made.
There goes the pizza industry in Dodge County, because Richelieu is a big maker of pizzas.
Yeah.
Many companies they make pizza for. So.
Well, there's a Meals in Watertown. There's that too.
Right.
Sorry. But yeah, we've got to be mindful of all of that. I personally wish that there were more of the antibody tests that were available, because again, the testing for the virus, I can test negative today, and who knows what's going to happen tomorrow. So what does that really tell us? It's a snapshot in time. I'd like to see a lot more antibody tests made available, but.
And it's the same with Richelieu, that these tests are, it's going to be a guess again. So.
Yeah, it's a snapshot in time.
Yep.
We've got another question, Vicki. Under the current restrictions, can a non-essential business open with safety precautions in place? If so, who would approve that plan?
So you need to go to WEDC's website, because if you're absolutely sure that your business is indeed deemed non-essential, then the answer is no, you can't open, or you shouldn't. And it isn't up to me. Public health has the right to, and I don't know if people are aware of this, but your public health officer in your county has the right and the authority to actually come in and have the conversation with you about what you need to be doing. And if they feel as though you're operating in an unsafe way or are not allowed to be open, they do have the right to ask you to close. I don't have any of that authority, so I'm just going to throw that out there. But I will say to you that the CDC guidelines are very clear. Our public health officers, I know Dodge County's public health officer is adhering to the CDC guidelines, and that's all out there at cdc.gov. You can look at, these are the steps that you should be taking for your business. The Wisconsin Manufacturers Council as well has put together a site where you can put in your NAICS code, so the type of business you are and where you're located, and it can take a look at your risk factors and give you some feedback as to the types of steps you should be taking in order for your business to reopen safely. But again, the governor's stay order is the governor's stay order. And really all I got. Do we have public health or law enforcement on this call? I'm going to get into trouble here.
Not the first time.
Yeah.
On average, of those seeking back to business help through the Small Business Center, how long can these businesses ride this out? Yeah, average is a really interesting way to think of that. Many businesses, 90 days seems to be, I would say, where the fat part of the curve is. And they've said, with the help that they've gotten, they can make it through 90 days. That takes us into June. By July 4th, I think, in the absence of additional help or some opening and allowing them a path to begin generating revenue, I think we'll start seeing, the real pain going on in there. Most businesses run on about 30 to 60 days worth of working capital. They can pare back and stretch that a bit. Again, some additional help from the resources available can stretch that a bit, but boy, 90 or 120 days is a long time to expect somebody to either go with very impaired revenue or no revenue at all.
Yeah, the average really depends on the type of business, but yeah, especially for retail. I mean, those predictions are dire.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Anybody want to unmute for the good of the cause? Tell us what's on your mind.
I guess I can go, if that's okay.
Sure.
My name is Mark McNally, and I'm with the Village of Cambridge. Now, we're down here in mostly Dane County, but a little bit of Jefferson. What, if anything, are you hearing from, town officials on how they can help with their local businesses that are really getting hammered with this? Are there any suggestions, anything that you heard that are great ideas for local government to consider?
Yes, and I'm glad you asked that question. So there are some communities that have taken a look at their resources that they may have had set aside. Maybe it's their TID fund, to take a look at how can we deploy some of these dollars in a way that can be helpful to our businesses. Some of those conversations have been very interesting. Is it a good idea to just simply give money to a business, or do you want to tie that funding in some way to helping them do something that helps them to be a stronger business going forward? For example, the whole digital presence, that conversation that I alluded to earlier. There have been proposals in some communities to do forgivable loans. So let's say, for example, for our businesses that don't have a digital presence or that really need to enhance that digital presence, maybe we'll make $2,500 available to you immediately. And if you enhance your digital presence or create that within a 3-month time frame, then 50% of that is forgiven, right? So it puts that business in a position where they're making an investment that they, quite frankly, probably should have made already. But now they're going to get some assistance to do that. And hopefully that's going to keep that business stronger. Because remember, we live in the upper Midwest. So we have weather that closes businesses, right? We have tornadoes, we have floods, things happen here. So this may not be the only time your business is closed. So what kinds of things can we be thinking about today, and help investments we can help you make today that will ensure that you can weather other things that may happen? So that's one idea.
Okay. Well, that assumes that your local treasury has the money to be able to make loans.
Yes, yes. They've, as I said, some of them have raided their TID fund. Yes, in the state of Wisconsin, you can't directly as a municipality make loans to businesses. That's not true in all states, but it's true in this one. So yeah, you don't have a way to do that, but what you can do if you want to is you can create a loan fund, and you do have the opportunity to do that and then figure out how you might want to disseminate those dollars to help your businesses. Again, the vast majority of our businesses, Kevin and I have talked a lot about this, the last thing they need is more debt, but helping them to make investments that will really help their business long term might be a money worth taking.
Okay. Well, that's one strategy. Does anybody else, have they seen anything, or, you know, are you aware of anything to the other listeners? Okay. I guess that takes care of that question.
Tracy Probst from Beaver Dam. And Vicki, you can speak to this. There were things going on in Waupun. I think they were doing some of that, and Mayville has also started doing some of that. In Beaver Dam, you know, we've talked about it, but we only have funds that are, you know, available in the TID, you know, which are contiguous to the downtown. And sort of the thought there is, you know, we need to see how this all shakes out first before you start dipping in.
Yeah, what I have also seen in a couple of different communities, in one community, some of the larger employers were tapped to create a pool of money to be able to help the smaller retail businesses. And again, that money was going to be available as a you know, loan to grant. So it could be a loan, but it could be forgivable, or the vast majority of it might be forgivable under certain conditions. Actually, Green Bay has done that. And then in Jefferson, we've had a business that stepped up and basically challenged the other businesses in the community to say, look, if you support your local businesses, you want to buy gift cards for those businesses, I'll match every gift card purchase of up to $20 for up to, you know, $2,500, right? So if you had a couple of different businesses that were willing to do that, then they buy gift cards, and it could be for a business that is closed right now, but it's for a future purchase. But the point was, we had some local business owners that just said, hey, I want to help support my local businesses, so I'll match that, you know, up to X, right? So you might want to try supporting that among your local business community to help one another out in some way, you know, see if they'll create a matching fund. I mean, we don't have a lot of options in terms of municipalities. They either have money in a TID fund or they don't. And they either have money set aside for this type of thing where they can create a loan fund, or they don't.
This is Jacqueline Shelton, and I'm on Beaver Dam City Council. I guess something you'd said earlier is, you know, cities needing to, you know, right now, obviously everything's coming from property taxes. That's how our cities are funded. And you said something earlier about needing to maybe look at that, or cities needing to address that. I'm wondering if you could expand a little more on what you were kind of thinking and what suggestions you would have at this time.
Sure, I'm happy to have that conversation, and I think it's a super important conversation for our municipalities to be having, because the real estate market is shifting and changing, and it's going to continue to shift and change. And so if that is your primary source of revenue, and that primary revenue stream has been coming from businesses and from business property taxes, you know, the choices become very difficult, right? You either shift that burden onto residential, or you raise the taxes even higher on the businesses that are in your community. Because you know, what we're seeing, like I used the nationwide example, I'm sure we're going to see more of that. We're going to see a lot more of businesses who don't need to have people housed in a physical space anymore, letting go of that space. Now, I can tell you because this is what I do for a living, the vultures are already circling. I am getting requests on a regular basis from people who represent real estate investors who are looking for the fire sales. They're looking for businesses going out of business. The real estate is the only asset that they have left. And we've got groups of real estate investors who are trying to buy hundreds of thousands and well over 1 million square feet of commercial or industrial space. They'll contact me and they'll say, listen, we're looking to buy anywhere from, just outside of Chicago to just outside of Minneapolis, so all the way across the state here, and we're looking to put together a pool of, maybe 1.5 to 2 million square feet of space. We've got all of the investors. They're looking to swoop in, right? So what's that going to mean for the municipalities? Well, a lot of times, and I've unfortunately seen this happen before, these real estate investors may come in and just tear stuff down rather than pay the property tax. They'll level it, but they'll hold on to that piece of land for when the next opportunity presents itself. Now, what does that mean for you as a municipality that's been dependent on that space and that tax? So I think this is only the beginning of what we're going to see when it comes to that. I'm very concerned. I'm quite frankly very concerned as to where this is heading, just based on all the national trend data and what I'm already seeing happening in Milwaukee and Madison. Now, if your question is what's Plan B, how else can municipalities raise the tax revenue necessary to provide government services? There's a conversation that needs to be had at the state level. Right? Because not all states run this way. I've lived in 9 states. They don't all run this way. So, there's an opportunity to open a whole different conversation.
We had a question come in a little bit ago from Tracy about any insight on unemployment claims for sole proprietors. I've had a lot of sole proprietors saying they've been denied despite the pandemic unemployment assistance in place, and just wondering if anyone's had any success.
Yep. And we've had so that portal opened and the days are just all blurring together, but I think it was April 27th or 8th.
I think it was the 21st, wasn't it? April 21st?
Yeah. Yeah. When that opened. And the DWD was just very picky at the beginning, looking for any reason not to approve. My understanding is that they got kind of their hands slapped, and that they're much more amenable these days. I have talked personally to a number of sole proprietors who have been successful in getting through now. So what I would say is be persistent, continue to, your first denial isn't your final denial. Continue to push and reapply and reapply.
And I would say to you that if you look at the Dodge County numbers, that week between that week that ended April 25th, because this opened on April 21st in Dodge County, you spiked up. So the week before it was 642 claims, and that week 710 claims. So I'm going to tell you, we had a lot of sole proprietors who got through and got into the system because it was open that week.
Yep. Any other questions?
Yeah. So I would encourage you to please reach out to us, with your thoughts about what might work for your business to reopen. Let us know what you're thinking. I talk to WEDC on a regular basis. We do chamber group calls. Tracy's been on them, trying to get input from all of the chamber members across the 2 counties as to how their businesses are being affected and what they'd like to see happen. And we're continuing to work on our smart reopening as well.
I want to give just a quick plug for our Back to Business program. If you are a business or you know of a business, just head to our website, thriveed.org. The intake form will take you, 90 seconds. So it's not a lot of information that we need in order to get started and get you the assistance that you need. So check that out if it's of interest.
Well, if no one else has anything else to contribute,
Actually, can I stop for a second? This again is Mark from Cambridge. I want to go back to the comment about the real estate, because when I look at that, I'm wondering how that is going to eventually affect municipal budget. And I realize the county gets involved with the first crack at the whole taxes, but eventually, the worth of these business or the worth of this real estate is going to affect the taxes that are collected, whether it's collected at a county level or it's collected at a state or even a municipal. So are there any projections so far that you have seen regarding what we may have in adjusted real estate values if we go out 2 years?
No, I have not seen those projections yet to go out 2 years. The projections that I'm seeing is just the proposed impact right now on retail. But you're spot on that concern. And I'm so glad that, I hate bringing this stuff up, but we have to bring it up. And I want to bring it up well before it's a crisis. I want to bring it up so that people are thinking about it and talking about it and making some plans for what might happen if we have a significant drop in the value of real estate in our communities. What's that going to mean? And how can you prepare for that, and how can you deal with it? Just based on what I see happening nationally, I don't have any projections at all for the state of Wisconsin, nothing. But based on what I'm seeing happen nationally, it's only a matter of time. I'm concerned.
Yeah. I mean, this could go down. You could see 25% compression of value. And then what do you do as a municipality? I don't hear too much about being able then to mess around with levy limits. I mean, your equalized value went down. It's going to affect what you take in, and it may not do it right away, but it'll be out there a year from now when we're doing our budget.
Yes, it will, sir. Yes, it will.
Talking with you is depressing today. I was hoping for all kinds of answers.
Well, part of the job of being the community's economic development official is to make sure that I'm telling my community the truth. Now, they don't always like it. But if I don't tell you the truth, then I'm not preparing you appropriately for what happens next. And I feel that that's my role. It's okay if you don't like it, or if you don't like me, but let's think this stuff through and make sure that it's on our minds. Because my job is to sell this community, to attract investment. My job is to make sure that we keep the existing businesses that are here and help them grow in place. I didn't have any pandemic training either. Nobody did. But I've lived through a few pretty darn nasty recessions, and this is, I lovingly refer to it as the Great Suppression, because it was a mandated suppression of our economy.
Yeah.
And how long it's going to last, what the multiplier effect of this suppression is going to be. The lessons that we're learning right now is that people are willing to shift a lot of the way that they've done business. And so whether that's a business that used to house people in a great big building and has figured out they don't need that anymore, or whether that's a business that is in education and has figured out that kids can learn from anywhere. They don't necessarily need to be in that building 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, or whether the business has learned that they can still make sales online, or that they've been able to automate some of their process in a way that they could actually cut some workers out of there. Now, you cut those workers out of the front end, like maybe you go to a restaurant and rather than somebody taking your order, you're making your own order on a screen. So that job is gone, but it's been replaced by somebody who's developing the software, developing the hardware, monitoring that. So it's a very different job. It's a very different job. So, you know, it's a plus and a minus. We've learned lessons, and some of the lessons we should have already learned. But we've learned a lot of lessons from this, and it's going to affect us for a while. There's not a doubt in my mind about that.
We have someone come in, we do have a comment in chat. I think he's on mute, but if you can unmute, Jonas Zahn, hope I said your name right, said I could share some observations and maybe some silver lining about how local businesses can thrive. So we would love that.
Sure, I even turned the video on. Forgive
All right.
my work attire. It's been moving day. We're moving the business during this pandemic.
Oh my goodness.
So what I'll share with you is, so my wife and I have a casket company called the Northwoods Casket Company of Wisconsin. Our customers are funeral homes all over Wisconsin. About 250 funeral homes we supply regularly, and we distribute caskets that are made in Indiana and Ontario, Canada. So we've tried to stay on this side of the two oceans with our suppliers, and we plant a lot of trees. What I can tell you from all of our clients, I mean, with the stay-at-home order, funerals aren't happening, so our sales are down. But March, they're down 10%. April, they're down about 20%. But so not terrible for us. They're okay. But here's the silver lining. This is happening everywhere. It's happening everywhere on the planet. So the Batesville and Matthews Aurora are the two companies that build about 90% of the caskets buried in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Here in Wisconsin. Those two companies have spent the last 20 years moving all of their manufacturing to China and Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And that supply chain is going to be under a lot of stress for the next 12, 18, maybe 24 months. Our suppliers in Indiana and Ontario, their phone's ringing off the hook. They're at maximum capacity. I expect once funerals take place, our high-end caskets that we make, we will be trying to keep up with orders as well. The silver lining in all this is, I mean, a global supply chain is being damaged right now. It's not just our governor's order. This is happening everywhere. In any business in our Tri-County or Jefferson Dodge County area that has the capability to make something, especially if it's an essential good, I think our municipalities, WEDC, we should be focusing on those businesses that can make something and fill that void, because that's going to be a large void when the international supply chain is under stress.
Yep.
And that might be a way that we can all thrive, or those of us who have the capability to make something can thrive as we open up the economy.
Thank you for that, Jonas.
Yeah, thank you, Jonas. I think we'll see more. We use the term reshoring,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll begin to see that, you know, both made in the USA and buy local seem to be a couple of trends that are starting to get some traction throughout this, as we kind of pull together and figure out how we're going to make our way through it.
Agreed. I've been having conversations with several of our manufacturers around the supply chain issue, Jonas, and you're spot on. For those that have got predominantly a US-based supply chain, they've been fine. For those that don't, some of them actually, even though they were deemed essential, actually closed for a couple of weeks because of the supply chain disruption. So yeah, you know, they're back open and they're rethinking that whole, gee, we shipped everything away a long time ago. Why'd we do that?
Good words.
So thank you
This
for
is
that.
Mark. This is Mark again. I'm curious, as far as other municipalities, trustees, members of the board, are you doing anything different with your chambers of commerce to maintain those connections? Is there anybody out there? Because our chamber of commerce is kind of separate. It's not part of local government. Well, don't everybody speak at once.
I'm going to jump in. You'll have to forgive me for my location. I'm actually pulling weeds and listening. So my name is Lisa Dossie Smith, and recently I have been the board president for both our downtown organization and our chamber. If your chamber is not involved in local government and actively communicating, push back, because they're not fulfilling their roles if they're not part of the conversation.
Okay. Where are you from?
Whitewater.
I'm in Whitewater.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
All right.
but I mean, honestly, and that is actually something that led my interest in joining a chamber or joining this chamber board, was to invigorate and to push back some of those things that have been kind of dropped. You know, our chambers serve much more of a function than just being event planners.
Yeah. We had a request from the chamber to look at our water and sewer rates, because many of these businesses are just shut down, and we have a minimum charge regardless of, you know, consumption. And what I find out is that you can't do anything. We've got bonds on this. And because the chamber was talking to me about possibly having I wouldn't say an abeyance, but not to charge them while this was going on. And we can't do it because you could have the same argument then with individuals. Well, I'm not using my water, so, you know, don't charge me for water and sewer. But I like the idea of putting it on them and having them come up with some ideas. So thank you. Anybody else?
This is Tracy from Beaver Dam. I'm in conversations with the mayor all the time, and we have been looking at this, but as I said earlier, that we still we have limited funds because it's tied to a TID, meaning that it's only going to be businesses that are in that area, and we just want to see where the funds are going to be needed when this starts opening up, is how we're approaching it.
Okay.
Mark, I would suggest that, and I'm happy to be part of that conversation. So I would suggest that we maybe set up an opportunity, a Zoom meeting or something similar to that, to get your chamber board of directors in Cambridge and your city council all on a call. And I'd be happy to be on that call with them as well, to have some conversations about, what they think their members need and what city council is looking to do, and maybe come up with some creative solutions.
Okay. I can suggest that. I don't know if that would be at a normal, we have trustees, but if it would be at a normal meeting, or if we could schedule something for like when the chamber meets. But I think that would be that's just a scheduling issue, but I like the idea, so I could do that. I'm making a note on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time with our chambers, but quite frankly, not a lot of time with Cambridge Chamber. Predominantly in Jefferson County, it's Whitewater, Watertown, Waterloo just disbanded, Johnson Creek is disbanded, Jefferson, Lake Mills, and Fort Atkinson.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's two ideas. Actually, it's two more than I had before I started this evening, so thank you both.
All right.
Well, we want to end on a high note. That's good.
Yes, we do. So again, I want to thank Russ. Thank you so much
Thank you,
for
Russ.
being on the call and enlightening us as to what's going on. These are hard conversations that you're having at the county government level, and we're all going to have them. It's just, I think it's important for our business community to understand how this is all tied together. Yes, our businesses are hurting. We care very deeply about that. We also understand that as a crisis occurs, I never want to waste a perfectly good crisis. We should always learn from them. But as a crisis occurs, there's usually then a demand for more government services, not less. And certainly Dodge County is seeing that, and at the same time doesn't want to have to ask for more in order to provide those services. You don't want to ask for more from your businesses that are hurting, from your residents who are unemployed. So this becomes a very difficult rope to walk on, right? You're on a tightrope, and we all are.
Very much so, Vicki. And the Human Services Board is meeting down the hall for me right now, just started. And I know that's on their issue of one of their discussion points about having what they're being affected by budget-wise and how much more human service needs are
Much
going to
more
be.
demand they have, yeah.
So.
Yep, and we're seeing it. We're definitely seeing it in Jefferson County as well. The demand for services, the numbers are going up exponentially.
Correct.
It's a problem. It's a problem.
Hey, Vicki, what is your coordinates so that I can get a hold of you?
You can just send me an email, Victoria P.
Okay.
at thriveed.org. So THRIVEED.org.
THRIVEE.
Yep, 2 E's and then a D.
Yep.
Thriveed.org.
Okay. All right. Let me do that. I appreciate you
Sure.
and everybody else listening to me, and especially the person there from Whitewater. That's a good recommendation. Thank you.
Well, thank you all. Have a good evening. It's happy hour. Do that safely from someplace.
All right. Thanks everyone for attending. We'll have a link to this up tomorrow
Yep.
on our website.
Take care.
Thank you. All right.
Nice, Kevin.
Read something here. Stop video. Oh. There we go. And mute. I'm on mute. Yeah.